One of the very few exceptions to the negative emotions that people generally have when they watch industries fail is watching the collapse of the liberal corporate media. It has been going on now for many years. In fact, prior to Donald Trump, the model of how corporate media was going to sustain itself in the digital age was something that almost nobody could figure out. It was really an inherently unsustainable model. And it was really the arrival of Donald Trump that gave that industry a sugar high. He saved so many jobs in media, especially the people who most hated him. Every anti-Trump network, every anti-Trump website saw a skyrocketing of business solely from people who couldn't get enough content about Donald Trump, especially negative content about Donald Trump. Liberals became monomaniacally obsessed about politics, but all sugar highs eventually cause a crash. And as people got tired of hearing about that every day, and especially once Trump went away, all of that got exposed, and then the collapse really started accelerating. And so while you have a couple of giants in the media industry that are really consolidating almost everything, eating it all up, like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, that have really become successful models, pretty much the entire rest of the media is collapsing all around it. And the reason is because they don't provide anything of value. They don't provide anything that people want. If you want liberal opinion, which is all that they ever offer, you can just go to the New York Times and get it. You don't need any of these other media outlets for it. They just offer nothing but the same repetition. It's extremely predictable. It's extremely banal. There's no ideological heterodoxy permitted. There's no vibrancy within them. And on top of that, they have been caught lying over and over and over again about so many of the most crucial issues. Our country was dominated for 3 years by a deranged conspiracy theory that most media outlets got on board with. And when you add up all of these failures and all of these kind of gutting of the passion and vibrancy of the industry, of course, people started turning away. They still want to know about politics. They still want to be informed. They just stopped trusting these media corporations that they understood had been lying to them, and they began looking elsewhere, which is what explains not the collapse of media, as people like to say, just the collapse of one sector of media, a big sector, to be sure, but one sector, which is the liberal corporate media. And yet, independent journalism continues to thrive in ways that are hard to explain. Now, for whatever reason, over the past 2 months, 3 months, and even over the past several weeks, this trend has really accelerated to the point where so many of the most recognizable and longest standing media brands are just starting to collapse in complete free fall. And even the billionaires who decided that they were going to invest in media outlets sort of as a charity project. We saw that with Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post. We saw it with Steve Jobs' widow, who bought The Atlantic. We saw it with Pierre Omidyar and many media outlets like The Intercept, where I used to work, but now the Bulwark and Bill Kristol's various projects are all starting to abandon media as well, because billionaires don't actually like to lose money year after year after year. And that's what's happening. Because when you have a public that has contempt for the product that's being produced and contempt for the people who are producing it, and they no longer trust it and value it, there's no way to get enough of their attention to be able to monetize it. Here from the New York Times just this last week, or actually this week, you see the headline there: billionaires wanted to save the news industry. They're losing a fortune. Quote, Time Magazine, the Washington Post, and the Los Angeles Times, owned by Mark Bainoff, Jeff Bezos, and Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, are still losing money. Time, the Washington Post, and the Los Angeles Times all lost millions of dollars last year, people with knowledge of the company's finances have said, after considerable investments from their owners and intensive efforts to drum up new revenue streams. In the middle of last year, the Times was on track to lose $30 million to $40 million in 2023, according to 3 people with knowledge of the projections. Last year, the company cut about 74 jobs, and executives have met in recent days to discuss the possibility of deep job cuts, according to 2 other people familiar with conversations. Mr. Bezos hasn't fared much better at the Washington Post. Like many news organizations, the Post has struggled to hold on to the momentum that it had gained in the wake of the 2020 election. Sagging subscriptions and advertising revenue led to losses of about $100 million last year. At the end of the year, the company eliminated 240 of its 2,500 jobs through buyouts, including some of its well-regarded journalists, well-regarded from the New York Times perspective. But that's 10% of the Washington Post's newsroom being laid off, despite having the backing of one of the 2 or 3 richest people on the planet. The Atlantic, which Laurene Powell Jobs bought in 2017, has set a target of reaching 1 million combined digital and print subscribers and achieving profitability. The company said it had more than 925,000 subscribers as of last summer, though it was still not yet profitable. The difficulties facing the companies are getting only more severe. Here from yesterday, NPR tells an even grimmer story. The title is "A Look at the Wave of Layoffs Hitting the News Industry." The LA Times has confirmed, and its employees are letting us know online, that it has laid off about 115 journalists in its newsroom of what had been only about 500. That represents about 22-23% layoff happening in a single day. The Washington Post just laid off 10% of its ownership. Like the LA Times, it is owned by a civic-minded billionaire. We at NPR went through a 10% cut last year. Here from the USA Today from 2 weeks ago, January 12th, the headline, NBC News lays off dozens in latest bad news for U.S. workforce. See 2024 job cuts so far. USA Today confirmed the NBC News layoffs on Friday. Other companies starting off their new year by slashing their workforces included Google, Twitch, Amazon, and Discord. The layoffs at NBC, first reported by Puck News, are the latest in an onslaught of cuts made in the journalism industry throughout 2023, including by NBC News, which slashed 75 jobs the same time last year, according to a timeline provided by Forbes. Now, I can spend all night, literally, reading to you articles like this from these exact media outlets that are in the part of the industry that is failing. And you will find everything in there about how deep these cuts are, how unprecedented they are, about how so much more is coming because the scenario is only getting worse and worse and worse. You'll see attacks on their competitors, like an independent media who they claim is responsible for spreading disinformation and doesn't provide the kind of responsible journalism that these outlets provide. You'll see all kinds of emotional, heart-tugging posts about how sad it is that these people are losing their jobs. These same people who went around telling other people in dying industries, oh, well, too bad there are no coal jobs, go learn how to code. And yet they treat the collapse of their own industry as one of the world's greatest tragedies. You'll find everything in these articles blaming Donald Trump and the Trump movement for undermining faith in American journalism. The one thing you will never, ever find, and believe me, I have been talking about this for a long time, so I look far and wide for any effort to find it, is any kind of self-reflection, any kind of effort on the part of the journalists who are in these failing sectors to ask of themselves, why is it that the kind of journalism I'm producing has no market? Why is it that the public hates me and my colleagues? I began my journalism career not by working at a major media corporation, but by just simply starting a blog one day in 2005, and I was able very quickly to build a large audience because what I was writing about and the way I was writing about it, obviously there was a market for it. There were people who were craving it and they couldn't find it elsewhere. That's how you succeed in journalism. When I was at The Intercept and it was funded by the billionaire P.O. Midyar, and people thought, well, we don't have to care about things that are beneath us, like trying to get people interested in our writing, trying to develop an audience. I used to always give a speech to them that I knew fell on deaf ears, which is that there's no such thing as good journalism that people don't listen to or care about. Journalism is not poetry, which can be ignored for 2 centuries until it's discovered under a bed, and then poetry experts say, wow, this is real art. Poetry and art can be beautiful and of the highest quality, independent of the impact that they have. That is not true for journalism. Journalism is not an art. It is solely a function of how it can affect society for the better, of how it can expose secrets, make people aware of things that they ought to know about, that the powerful are doing. But if you don't have a way to attract people to be interested in what you're saying, no matter how beautiful your article is, no matter how well constructed and well written, how nice the graphics are, if nobody's reading it, by definition, it's not good journalism. And that is the problem, one of the problems with the corporate media that is largely liberal, which is overwhelmingly the vast bulk of what they are, especially in the age of Trump. They all decided that their mission, their overarching mission, was not to inform the public, but was to defeat Donald Trump and his movement. And so they all became homogenized. They all became activists. They all became overtly partisan. And they all became copycats of one another. There's barely any dissent. Who is a kind of maverick within corporate journalism? The minute there is one, they're gone. Even at Fox News, Tucker Carlson started gradually and then rapidly deviating from standard conservative politics, and despite having the best ratings, he was out. The one thing corporate media does not tolerate is any sort of heterodoxy, any sort of challenge or divergence of views. No real debate possible. You can have debates between Republican and Democratic strategists about horse races. Oh, Nikki Haley's going to win. No, she's not. But not about the real issues governing how power is dispersed in the United States. And then on top of that, you have all those media frauds, major media frauds, in which the country has been drowning for years, that come not from 4chan or Facebook or social media, but from the largest media corporations in the world. And you just look at polling data, and we will show it to you in just a second, that shows that people just hate journalists. They hate corporate journalists. They do not trust them, and therefore have no interest in what they're saying. Now, there are other macroeconomic factors that are playing a role in the collapse of these media companies, to be sure. The monopoly of Google and Facebook and ad revenue, the difficulty in monetizing content in the digital age, the fact that people don't have subscriptions that come to their house anymore, that people have expected to be able to read content for free. These are all cultural changes that have affected media outlets. As these media outlets weakened, they got taken over by venture capitalists who just wanted to suck the profit out of them and didn't care at all about the bones that they left these institutions in. But none of that would be happening if these institutions maintained the trust of their readers and had a lot of people interested in what they have to say. Because if you look at new media, if you look at independent media, people who have the ability to attract interest in their work and who develop trust and faith in their viewers are doing better than ever. The media is not failing. The media that is composed of corporate media corporations, liberal media corporations, Brooklyn-based digital liberal outlets, they are the ones that are failing. And therefore, it's not that hard to understand why. It's because their behavior has caused, deservedly so, the public to lose not just trust in what they say, but interest in everything they're doing. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.